Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name's Abigail Steele. If you've not met me before, if you have met me before, hi, thanks for coming along. Today we are going to talk about handwriting and we're going to get straight on with it. I was watching back a previous webinar that I did recently to see if it was suitable for something, and it really occurred to me how much I sometimes just waffle and don't get to the point. So today we're going to really just try and get on with things and have some interesting content about handwriting. So bear with me, I'll share screen. Share window. There's a chat box on Crowdcast, so by all means pop any comments that you want to in the chat box. Let me just make sure I've got that up as well. Yeah, I have. This session is recorded so that you can watch it later, or you can share it with other staff. You can just always come back to the same link or come back to the page on my website that is webinars. And then you can always find the webinar again in future to watch. So handwriting, I'm going to talk about my particular approach to handwriting, and it's a teaching approach. It's really supportive for teaching handwriting, but it's also the approach used in Rocket Phonics. So if you're a Rocket Phonics user, and particularly Rocket Phonics Next Steps, this is an explanation behind the handwriting that's used there and sort of how to teach it and why we do it that way. So a little bit of a plan for the session. We're going to have some rationale why I do things the way that I do them, and then we'll also have a go. So if you haven't already got a pen or pencil or a piece of paper to hand, you might want to grab that or watch it again later on recording with those things, with a pen and paper, because I think it would be really nice to have a go at some of these letter formations and handwriting, to think them through. I say when I do phonics training with the alphabetic code, we're generally really comfortable with the letters and sounds, but if we don't take the time to stop and go through the sounds and look at the graphemes, we're not getting that practice ourselves. So I'd really like you to have a go at some of the handwriting that we look at today. So there have been some quite recent changes to the kind of expectation with handwriting, sort of what the DFE are looking for, what the experts are talking about. You may or may not know that handwriting has been quite controversial for a very long time, but it's often the poor relation. There are so many things that we're thinking about in education. It gets kind of left to the side, or people think of it as, oh, it's very straightforward to teach handwriting. You can just follow a program and that'll teach you a doodle for you. But actually, we've had a trend in England, certainly, where different schools have done different things, but a lot of people had gotten into this trend, this habit of trying to do cursive writing with very young children, and trying to do precursive, so individual letter shapes, but with joins and sometimes, lead in and lead out strokes on those letter shapes, and then not joining them together. Or there was a bit of mismatch going on of, so when would that happen in a school? So there's been a lot of campaigning from people like me for a long time about having some clarity over the fact that perhaps it's not the best idea to push precursive too early with young children. And in a minute, there's a slide where I've very crudely drawn my examples of things that I've seen in practice that have showed me this is not right for our very littlies. That said, you know that I'm always really transparent with you. And over the years, I've been into many, many, many schools supporting, but I have been to a couple of schools in my time who did full cursive with children right from the beginning of reception, and it worked well in those particular schools. So I'm not about, swinging one way or the other in education. We have to be measured and we have to appreciate, actually, sometimes it can work in a particular context, but on the whole, it's been a bit messy. So I get very excited about handwriting. I love it. There's many benefits of it. We'll look at that in a minute. And I think it's a really exciting time when your school says, do you know what? Let's pause. Let's look at our policy. Let's look at the way we do handwriting. Let's look at the consistency across the year groups, and how can we bring handwriting in to part of the great practice that we've now got going on with things like phonics and basic literacy and things like our ongoing CPD for teachers. Let's bring handwriting into that fold. So here on the screen, we've got the extract from the reading framework from 2023. And actually, when I read through and sort of looked at, well, what does it say about handwriting? There were a couple of bits that were a little bit ambiguous. And really, that's because this is a reading framework, it's not a writing framework. We are expecting something to come out for writing at some point, or it was on the agenda, but we'll see what happens with the DFE in the near future. So there's just this small extract here. which is talking about handwriting in reception and year one, an acknowledgement that learning to form letters and spell words requires considerable effort and attention. While some pupils who may have SEND may need reasonable adjustments, the vast majority of children should be taught how to sit with correct posture on a chair at a table using a tripod grip to hold a pencil. Developing the right habits from the beginning allows children to write comfortably and legibly. Schools should consider the advantages to children of delaying the teaching of joined handwriting. Nearly all the head teachers in the schools Ofsted visited for its Bold Beginnings survey did not teach a cursive or pre-cursive script in reception. They told inspectors that they believed it slowed down children's writing at a point when they had already found manual dexterity tricky and the muscles in their shoulders, arms, and hands were still developing. So quite happy with the way they've sort of touched upon it there. There's obviously a lot more to it than that, but that's our sort of current steer on what people are thinking at the moment. So we're looking for printed letter formation. Ideally, it's not compulsory, it's strongly recommended in year R, reception year, and year one. It's really important to get that print formation correct. And if you learn, or if you teach and children learn print formation and then later they learn joined or cursive formation, that isn't learning two different shapes or two different styles. It's always the print at the core of it, and then we're learning to add the joins on. So it's not about learning one way and then having to learn a second way later, which might sound confusing. It's not. But we've seen a lot of errors in children who are taught cursive too young, confusing the joins with the shape of the letter. The print formation, if you imagine young children when they're starting their phonics journey, those are the shapes that they see in the phonics, on the flashcards and in their activities in phonics, and also in early reading books. These children are learning the sound to produce for those print shapes. If they on top of that have to learn the shapes with the joins, that is kind of throwing in another complexity for them to have to deal with. So I personally would avoid cursive in reception and year one. Throughout the presentation today, I've got my crude mouse drawn examples for you. So my handwriting is not perfect, but it's just demonstrative. I promise you that if we were in person and I was showing you on paper or I was showing you on a whiteboard, it'd be far neater than it will be. But these are some examples of a lowercase n with the join, and that squiggly shape that I've shown next to it, that's really typical of what I've seen with young children, particularly in reception, when they're trying so hard to put that join on, but it's just all a lot going on and it ends up looking a bit like that. And I know people will identify with that because I talk about it in training all the time. And also for a hooped K, a lot of schools have the style of a hooped K, and a hooped K is a pretty tricky shape to cope with. And so we end up with some quite obscure formations in reception. It often looks like a capital R in reception. So I recommend that year 2 is the ideal year group for starting cursive handwriting. But I'm not black and white about that. It absolutely does depend on your particular school and your particular year 1 cohort. So I have met people who say, well, actually, Abby, in our school, the year 1s are ready and raring to go. And the year 1 teacher, they're really confident they want to teach the cursive. Fine, if your year 1s are ready, go for it. It's just that I more commonly see year 1 classes where the large majority of the year 1s aren't really ready for it yet. They're still working on their print. They're not yet secure in things like their sizing or their shapes. What I would avoid is starting cursive with part of the class. So I wouldn't in summer term year 1 take half of them and start doing cursive and not the other half. I would leave it as we're just going to do print, and then the year 2 teacher, they've then got it as part of this is what we do in year 2. It's on my shoulders. I get the pleasure and also the responsibility of going for it with this cursive. I would be extremely wary about leaving it later than the very beginning of year 2. So beginning of year 2, boom, in, let's go. If you leave it later than that, handwriting habits are really difficult to change. You'll know that from working in the classroom. Children form patterns and habits with their writing, and it's really difficult to unpick. So if you leave it too late, they become so embedded in print that they can struggle to move to cursive. It's a bigger transition for them. So, like I say, not black and white. That's my opinion, and that's what we've put into Rocket Phonics as a guide, is that you would do print reception year one, and then next steps year two, you would begin your cursive journey. I don't advocate fun handwriting ditties, and people hate me for this because people love a fun handwriting ditty. And again, each to their own. It's not for me to dictate to you or control the way that you do things. Brilliant question from Victoria. How late is too late? I'm a secondary school teacher. I would absolutely give it a go. I just mean starting in year two on a kind of mainstream pathway. Actually, the teaching style that I'm going to show you is brilliant for all age of learner, and it's really exciting to do it as an intervention. So in primary, I've been in before and done it as a whole primary school intervention. We are all going to have this start from scratch, learn this way, because it will really help you. I would 100% give it a go at secondary school, and I'll get on to why in a minute. So no fun handwriting ditties, and again, people come for me for this, and I'm not here to dictate. If you love handwriting ditties, go for it. That is your prerogative as a teacher, and I'm not here to dictate. But for me, look at these handwriting ditties. These are real handwriting ditties, and I would like you to think in your head, well, what is the letter shape that she's describing? Around the head, down the body, down his body, around his face, down the person, around the wheel, started his ear, around the face and down the beard, down his body, around his face. Now, I'm being a little bit dramatic, but for me, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a learner who might have some memory difficulties, they might find learning a bit more challenging, that's quite confusing. And when I'm writing, I'm not visualizing, I'm not thinking about heads and ears and bodies and necks and tails and all of those things. I really want my learners to be focused on the shape of the letter. Where do I start? Which way do I push my implement? What do I do next? And I think that these fun handwriting ditties add an extra layer of complexity that is not necessary. Alongside that, you will find that when people teach with these ditties, they have an image, a picture, often on top of the letter. So we've got a little example here of a duck on top of the letter shape of a D. I can't see the D. Can my learners see the D? And the shape of the D is the most important part of that. So I think it's a distraction. So just be wary of that and just sit with it and think about it when you're hating me for not putting in a handwriting ditty to my work. When children write a word, what is it that you want them to think about? And often you really want them to think about what sounds can they hear as they go through that word. You want them to segment that word to have a go at spelling it, to try and get the right spelling. So I want to write the word dog, or if we're talking secondary, it might be I want to write the word dogmatic. I need the sounds d, o, g. That's what I want going through my children's head while they're writing. I don't want them to have to think about, I want to write the word dog. I've got to go around a face, down a back, across the feet, back up the tail. You get my point. So I advocate for clear, straightforward descriptions, keeping it really simple. That the script, and this is the script that is in Rocket Phonics, if you're secondary and you don't use Rocket Phonics, but you would like some script, I will, after this webinar, I will add to the chat a link where you can download letter scripts for print and for cursive. So I will add that all in for you at the end. So come back a bit later for that. But in Rocket Phonics, we've got some scripts, and sometimes people say, oh, they're a bit complicated or it's a bit wordy. That's for the adults, because actually we have a whole generation of teachers, probably a couple of generations, where we haven't been taught as part of our teacher training how to teach the formation of each and every letter. We're sort of relying on following programs and picking it up or having that knowledge ourselves already. So keep it simple. We want learners and teachers to engage with the actual letter shape and model whilst talking your process aloud. So it's the same as when you're teaching something for reading. You're teaching reading, you're looking at a piece of text, and you might read the text to the learners or with the learners, and then you're talking your thought process. Oh, I wonder why that character did that. Oh, what clue did we have about that in the text? It's the same with letter formation, handwriting. So in this example, we would, for the print A, we would find the writing line. We would look and judge the space, the height that we want that A, that sort of midpoint, sort of a little way up. We would put our pencil down and we're going to go up and over. And you might say up and over the hill, Or you might say, I'm going to start here. You might be modeling, I'm going to start here. I'm going to go up and over, round this way, round to the left, curl it all the way around. I'm going to straighten up to catch the hook, and you'll see why we call it a hook in a bit at the top, and then go straight down and flick. But naturalize it, make it your own. That's absolutely fine. So a couple of bits of food for thought. I do get really into this stuff, and I do think about everything very, very thoroughly. So the red formation here of the letter X, this is really classic. This is a traditional formation that you might see in some handwriting programs. So you can see there we've got the starting point that says 1. So we're going to start over on the left, and we're going to go down diagonally to the right, lift off our pen or pencil, start up on the top right and go diagonally down to the bottom left. And I don't form an X like that. I would start top left, down diagonally to bottom right, lift off pencil and go back across to the left and start at the bottom left and go up to the top right. Why do you think I form the letter like that? It's because I want my pen or pencil to end up at the top right-hand corner of that X, ready for if I want to join a letter on. So even if I'm not joining yet, even if I'm younger than that, if I've learned it to finish my pencil stroke at the top right, I'm ready if I want to do an E next, like in the word foxes or boxes. With the K, a similar idea. So the red formation is a more traditional classic formation you might see. So we start at the top and we do the long stroke down, and then we start out where the number 2 is and we go in and out, a bit like a sort of zigzag in and out. But actually I would do start at the top, long straight down to the writing line, find the midpoint, push out and up, push out and down. And the reason for that is young learners find it really difficult to find that point 2 on the red K, to find a space in the middle of nowhere and bring a line back and join it. Whereas if they have a reference point, if they can find that point on the green line, they've got a starting point to push out to the sides. So they're just these little things that are useful, preemptive for what might happen later. Why no to precursive? So this is really traditional of what we've seen in primary schools across the last 10 or so years, maybe even 15 years. We've seen this epidemic of children writing and adults printing stuff off in precursive. So all of the letters have got joins on, but the letters aren't joined together. And what's happened is, I'll show you on the next slide. So imagine children write like this and they form all these beautiful letters, but nothing's actually joined together, but they're building those habits, those writing habits of where these joins are as they see it here. And we think we're doing a good thing because we're teaching all of those joins and, preempting when they're ready to move to cursive. But when they move to cursive, there's often either a bit of a weakness in teaching the way those joins then work, because they don't all just join together. You need different joins for some of those letters. Or the habits are so ingrained that they find it really difficult to engage with the new joins. And what you'll get is, for example, here we've got the capital letter joining on to the lowercase. And where we've got the W in weekend, went, and with, the learner is trying to come back down to the writing line to go back up for the next join that they might have on the E or the I there, rather than knowing that they would do a little smile join or a washing line join at the top. Another example there in the word park, this is absolutely classic. With the letter R, the learner has done the R, they've come back down to the writing line to do their join for their K. They didn't realise that actually from the top of the R, they would just do a little smile or washing line join to the middle of that K. So these little details are really interesting to look for in learners' writing. Sometimes you can have learners writing that looks really very smart. The sizing's there and the spacing might be there. But when you look at the individual joins, they're not correct. And it can hamper their work because they can end up with words that are difficult to read because of those joins. Also, an extra point, when do we ever write in precursive? So this style of writing in this not joined together cursive, this precursive, isn't what we do as adults or mature writers. We don't want our junior children or our secondary children writing like this. We want them to move towards cursive. So common problems that I see when children do move to cursive. Letters squeeze too closely together. So the words become very, very bunched because they're sort of trying to join them and they become bunched. Incorrect joins because children are used to precursive letters all starting on the line. Joining capital letters. And I had another one that I thought later, but I can't remember what it is now. But if it comes to me, I'll add it in. Like phonics, children can look secure at letter level or even word level in a handwriting lesson, but struggle to apply it to independent writing. And I think that's something that you'll be really familiar with. Same as in something like phonics, they have a phonics lesson, they're brilliant. They go to their English lesson, it's all gone. It's the same with handwriting. In a handwriting lesson, they're brilliant, it's immaculate, they really enjoy it. They go to another lesson, there's other things to think about, handwriting falls by the wayside, and they struggle to apply that moving across. So that's one of the things that we need to have in our mind, is to, when we're thinking about the amount of direct teaching, the amount of scaffolding support, and then moving them to independence. Importantly, let's take a quick pause. Why does it matter? In a world where we are speaking into things and we've got, voice recognition and converting it to text, or we are typing on keyboards. And as an aside, I really wish that touch typing was a curriculum item, because it's quite embarrassing. Here I am, a middle-aged woman doing tons of writing all the time, and I type with one hand and I plod quite quickly and effectively, but I wish that I could touch type with two hands. I think that's a skill that our learners should have. So why does handwriting matter? It aids writing fluency. You can write faster when you are joining. It increases confidence as a part of that, because you're writing more smoothly, you're writing faster, it looks very smart. There is research, I haven't dug the research out, you can go down that rabbit hole if you want to, but there is research, and I do agree and believe that there are links between the kinesthetic muscle memory to spellings. When you're not sure how to spell something, you think, well, let me write it, let me see if it jogs my memory and if it brings it back to me. So I do believe that when we join and we write a word, it can really help us with that spelling. It raises self-esteem and motivation. Oh my goodness, doesn't it just? When you see a child that you transform from really struggling handwriting or weak handwriting, and you manage to get them to turn this corner, which can be so quick with this method, their self-esteem goes through the roof. It's incredible. It's really, really heartwarming. And ultimately, this is the golden nugget. In England, for most of our students, we still have an exam system that relies on those older students being able to write fluently and legibly to communicate their answers. They will lose marks in exams if they haven't got the speed to get all of that information out, to get all the points. And if their writing is not easy for examiners to read, then they're going to lose points, which is very, very unfair, but that's just the system that we're in. So it's important to really give this a go. That goes back to Victoria's question about how late is too late. She's a secondary teacher, and I'm saying we've really got to try and give it a go. Again, give it a go. Self-esteem and the exams that they might have to write. So tripod pencil grip is agreed across all of the experts unanimously as the aim, the correct way to hold a pen or pencil. It blows my mind that when I go to schools and I look around at children's pencil grip, I hardly ever see correct tripod pencil grip. And I think if you did a bit of a survey, you look at your classes, I think you'd be quite shocked. Admittedly, the older the learner, the harder it is to correct pencil grip. And so there does come a point where you say, this learner is older now. I've tried, I've showed them, I've supported them. It's so ingrained, it's so embedded, that's not going to change. Absolutely fine. It's not the be all and end all. But if children can get this tripod pencil grip, I guarantee, it's so hard to break this habit. If they can have the tripod pencil grip, it is more comfortable. It aids the fluency, it aids the speed. And I meet people all the time, teachers who say, well, hang on a minute, I actually hold my pen in a really primitive grip or a really bizarre hold, and my writing's beautiful. Absolutely fine. I just can tell you from my experience that I have met children who because they're holding it in the wrong way, I've seen calluses on fingers and blisters, and I've seen children lack writing stamina because it hurts. It puts so much pressure on their fingers that they can't write at any length. So I try to encourage this. Early. Yes, we've got all of those, at nursery and into reception. We've got developmental stages, absolutely. And we're really, developing all our motor skills, our fine motor skills. But when we start to move to sort of more formal handwriting practice, so really alongside phonics, at 4 to 5 in reception, we really need our adults to be on the case of every single phonics or handwriting lesson. Let's check our pencil hold. Let's check the way we're holding our pencils. I'm going to bring around stickers for children that I see holding their pencil correctly. I've got my little froggy toy. So with young children, we might teach froggy legs. We talk about, show them that your pincy fingers, your thumb and your first finger are like frog's legs, like the bowed back legs of a frog. And it's quite fun to show them a video or a photo of what a frog's back legs look like when they swim. Rest the pencil across the back of the frog between his legs and pinch, and then the middle finger becomes the resting log under. But you do have to be on it all the time, and it's hard. Teachers have got behavioural things and lesson requirements, and they're trying to teach reading and writing, and there's so much going on. It's often forgotten, really, forgotten. So we need all of our teachers from very young to be on it for this tripod pencil grip. It's absolutely fine if you teach tripod pencil grip in a bit of a different way. So some people like to do lay the pencil on the table, pick it up and flip it over. Absolutely fine. Or if you want to talk about crocodile pinchers, whatever method you like, absolutely fine. And by all means, explore with different pencil grippers. There are different quality pencil grippers, but for some children, that can really help them if they're finding it very difficult. There are pencil grippers which put their fingers in that position, and you can use that for as long as they need to form that habit. Like we say, really hard habit to break. Give it a go, explain it, talk about it, and maybe look out for, if you have children who do not have correct pencil grip, have a bit of a session with talking about, let's give it a go. It will help you, have a go. But look out for the children where, well, actually, is it causing them a problem or not? If it's not causing them a problem, fine, we've done our best. If it's actually causing them a problem with the pressure or with the formation or something, then it's worth trying a little bit more, bit of extra effort. Anyway, that's pencil grip. Good sitting posture. Certainly with junior children in primary school, we see lots of sloppy sitting, especially when we've just come through generations of collaborative group work. So tables in groups where children are around a table to be able to discuss what they're learning, but then they're actually having to twist and contort their bodies to see the teacher at the front and to see the board. And then when they write, they're not sort of correcting their posture back to write correctly. They're twisted. Or we've had issues in our schools with numbers, tons of kids packed into the class, 32, 33 children packed in. There aren't enough table spaces. Children are squashed together with their elbows. So you've got to, take it in context, do what you can. But the idea would be that you talk to your children about both feet on the floor, put bottom on set, bottom on seat, that is a typo, bottom on seat, back straight. With older learners at secondary, this is going to be harder, of course. They're not going to want to hear you talking about posture, but it's still worth mentioning. The writing hand resting lightly on the paper below the words being written so that the words are not obscured. That is the same for left-handers or right-handers. And you can achieve that writing hand being underneath by tilting the paper slightly. So whether you're left-handed or right-handed, you tilt the paper slightly to the angle you need. It's about, I can't think what the degrees are. I can't think, but you just tilt it slightly to the left or right, and then your spare hand keeps the paper steady so it doesn't move all over the place. And just be aware of seating positions to check elbows aren't bumping into one another, and be aware of that left-handers might need to sit on the left-hand side of the classroom so that you can sort of model and check in with them, especially if they're copying from the front. So think about seating posture. Right, my handwriting style then. Let's get on to the nitty-gritty of this style and how we teach it. So this style is an all-joined style. We're not doing precursive. We're teaching the letters with the joins, but then we're moving very quickly into cursive. And there are two main joins. How simple is that? Two joins. A diagonal join, which starts with the pencil or pen on the writing line. So it's a diagonal line up. And a smile join or a washing line join. Call it what you'd like to. The diagonal join and the smile join do need to be adjusted slightly for writing the letter E. And those are the kind of details that writing the letter E, that adjustment that are sometimes missed when handwriting is taught, but are really important if we want learners to engage with it. For these joins then, I would, with my learners, demonstrate the two main joins by drawing two separate squares sitting on a writing line. So I would give my children some lined paper and I would say, right, we're going to have a go at drawing these squares, or if they're young, I might provide those squares drawn for them. But I don't think it hurts them to have a little go at drawing that square, give it a try. And they've got to judge the height of that square. So you're getting them to look at those writing lines, and you could use a wider line with slightly younger children, but just a regular lined paper as they get older, because you really want them to engage with where is the midpoint of those writing lines. That's how big my square needs to be. In one square, draw a straight line from the bottom left-hand corner to the top right-hand corner to form that diagonal line join. And for some learners, just drawing that diagonal line in a straight, hard line, we're not talking about a soft cursive line, it is a hard straight line. That might be quite challenging. That might be quite new. So you might need to have lots of practice, and you might want to get them to do some practice without the square. So just then drawing that diagonal straight line. I know that sometimes when I'm modeling it, I have to have a few goes to get it straight and get it the right angle. In the other square, draw the curved line from the top left-hand corner to the top right-hand corner to form the smile join. And I would absolutely get my learners having a go at this too. So really want them to engage with exactly what we're doing. Learners thinking for themselves, really important point. The joins, the reason for having that very hard, straight diagonal line is it's going to really help with the spacing. You know, we said about learners squashing their letters together. The joins are very important for spacing letters evenly, and gradually over time it will become less awkward looking. It looks very spaced, but good, because they're really thinking about the spacing and the shapes. That will soften and it will naturalize and come together. Learners are taught to think carefully about which part of each letter is the letter shape, the print formation letter shape that they know, and which part of the letter is the join. And the join is not part of the letter shape. And like I say, that hard diagonal will soften naturally over time. Not to the settle example of the word spacing. That's me showing squashed together spacing. That's how it often looks when learners go. And we're looking for, at the moment, this harder spaced word. Keeping it simple and consistent. So at first, all lowercase letters are taught as discrete shapes, starting with the pencil point on the writing line to form the diagonal lead-in stroke, or leader, lead-in, whatever you want to call it. So we always start on the writing line, diagonal line up, and diagonal line judging to that kind of mid-height that you're going to go to form your letter. Now, one of the things people commonly ask me about is having a lead-in stroke at the beginning of a word. So if I was going to write the word ant, I would have a lead-in stroke at the beginning of a on ant. And some handwriting styles don't do that. Some handwriting styles start the word with no lead-in stroke. You just join in the middle of the word. The reason I have a join-in stroke at the very beginning is because it's extremely dyslexia friendly, extremely friendly for children who might have memory difficulties, because every single lowercase letter, every single word is going to start with that join. You don't have to remember what things look like without. So it's just really, really consistent, but it is a personal preference. So some schools will teach it without, and that's absolutely fine. You would just explain, in our school, we don't put a lead in at the beginning, and that's just a little extra bit that children have to remember. So it's not a big deal, but it's just explaining why I would do it that way. So a useful script is along this line. Start on the line, diagonal up to mid-height, hook over. That's a really important bit. Hook over. Go back round and catch the hook. And having a bit of script like that helps to avoid this common gappy issue, which again, I bet you will recognize in your writers, where the A, the O, the D, the G, they've got that gap at the top of the letter. They're not going back round. So if we have diagonal up and hook over, we're making sure we form the top of that shape, and then we go back, and then we make sure we catch that hook, we join it back up at the top. So that's a nice little bit of script that can be helpful for some of those letters. Excuse me. We don't teach strings of letters. So again, this is something that goes a little bit against tradition, because you might have done handwriting practice traditionally with children. And I remember doing this at school and loving it. I loved doing these letter strings. So I've got the classic example there of the letter C all joined together, and they look like waves, and they're all sort of, a lovely pattern. Fun. Yep. Pretty good for some motor control, but actually I would argue not particularly helpful for handwriting as such. Again, think about that. We want them to apply this handwriting. We don't write great big long letter strings. Admittedly, we have longer words, but they're going to have different letters and different joins. So it would be better in the case of individual letters to practice the individual letter with a join multiple times. But I don't think there's a benefit in this protracted drawing the same letter joined, going on and on and on and on and on. So I would do practice the letters. And here you've got a little example of a page that comes from Rocket Phonics in Next Steps. And we've got in the revisit and review, you can see we're practicing the C, the A, and the D. And these are from the same letter family. They have the same shape that we're using. So we're practicing the letters. In this particular example, we've got an opportunity to write on top of the letters and then have a go practicing ourselves on the writing line. And then we're moving to words. We're moving straight to cursive words, being able to look at the word, and then we're thinking about, so for example, camp, I might model the word camp on the board, and I would say, right, I need to start on the writing line, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round, up and catch the hook, down to the line, diagonal up, down, up and over, diagonal up, down, and all the way down through the writing line, and then back up, around, and a little flick on the end. So I would model it and talk that through, using, describing what I'm doing, and hopefully learners will be thinking that when they're writing, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round, to help with some of those habits that we sometimes see. So not only are learners taught to form each individual letter shape to fluency, lots and lots of practice, they're also taught to think carefully about the letters they write and the join each letter needs in whole words. So we're really paying attention to, which join is it going to be? Is it going to be that diagonal join, or is it going to be a smile join? Can we see any of the smile joins? And we've got an example in the word card. The R has a smile join over to the D. And further down, we've got a W in was, and that's got a smile join over to the A. And we're really talking about that explicitly as we go. It gets them up and running sooner. So this level of engagement with the mechanics of the writing style, instead of just mindlessly copying strings of letter shapes and words, results in learners proceeding rapidly to joining any words they wish to write independently. And that's the aim of the game. We give them this practice, but we encourage them, as soon as they're feeling ready, as soon as they want to, as soon as they're ready to have a go, just start using it, start writing like that. And we'll then help you by spotting bits you need to work on, or having lessons where we focus on particular families to improve that bit. Some learners may be able, I've seen many learners able to almost instantly convert to this style because they get it. It just suddenly makes sense to them. And it's the same principles as phonics. So systematic synthetic phonics teach them the mechanics of how reading works, and they're able to work out more. Saw somebody had a post on social media earlier. It was saying, teach children to read 10 words, they can read 10 words. Teach children the phonics of, sapin or 10 sounds, and they can actually, when they can blend, read 350 words. So it's the same idea. We teach the mechanics so that then they can write anything using cursive. A note on capital letters, because that's a common mistake that children will accidentally join them. All uppercase or capital letters are simple print letter shapes which do not join other letters. We teach that capital letters start from the top or in the air. That is from just below the upper writing line, dependent on the spacing between your lines. When writing a whole word, which requires a capital letter at the beginning, a small space is left after the capital letter, and then the second, the lowercase letter, starts on the line, and all subsequent letters in the word are joined. So just clarification on that. So an introductory lesson, if I was going to go and do this with my students, depending on my cohort, you might like to teach an introductory handwriting lesson, showing those squares with the two joins, demonstrating each letter of the alphabet with diagonal leading strokes. So although we do teach and we focus on sort of families of letters that have the same shape, actually there's no harm in, especially with older children or even year two, guys, we're going to start this approach to handwriting. We're going to have a real focus. And actually, I'm going to show you all of the letters. We're going to have a little practice at all of the letters, because those children who really click with it and get it immediately, they're off then. They don't need to wait until you've taught the families of letters. So demonstrate each letter of the alphabet with the diagonal leading stroke and explain the concept of learners thinking about those joins. Is it diagonal? Will it need to be a smile join? And that the letters are distinct and separate. And allow children to have some fun, practicing on some lined paper. If you have learners who are less confident or who require additional support, absolutely fine to provide something like a sheet of prepared alphabet letters. They could trace over. They could trace over and add the diagonal join to each letter. So no problem for you to put in any scaffolds that you think are appropriate there. When I've used it with a lot of children, they don't need that. We go for it straight as it is, and then we might unpick who needs something a bit further. Which lined paper? Because I know this is a controversial topic in schools. For me, it fits with the idea of total learner engagement to not use paper with multiple lines on it. I know some schools will say, but we've had really transformational results since we introduced handwriting books that have got the blue lines, the red lines, the grey lines, the little lines, the dotted lines. Oh, it's amazing. For me, that is a lot. It's confusing. When I'm trying to write on those lines, I'm thinking, oh gosh, what's the dotty line? What's the red line? Which one am I going to? I think that some learners find that really difficult. And I think sometimes it creates that thing of learners looking like they're doing well because they learn how to use those lines. But when they apply it outside of that lesson, they don't have those lines. It's not there. They don't really, it's potluck as to whether they kind of have picked it up or whether not, because they're not engaging with it. So I like that all learners from year two or year one, if you're doing year two, they are required from the outset to think carefully about the space and sizing and make those judgments. And that might be part of your learning objective with the handwriting, is actually we're going to practice the spacing or the sizing because this learner finds it really difficult to judge finding the right sort of space and size. My experience is that multiple lines are simply not necessary and add extra clutter. The very children you think it will be helpful for might find it more challenging. So see what you think. Okay, teaching order. Nothing particularly new or revolutionary here. I think most people agree on the teaching order of letters, for handwriting. It's useful to focus on discrete handwriting lessons on groups of similarly formed letters. So here we have the C letters. They all have a really similar formation: diagonal join, hook over, back and round, catch the hook. And if I wasn't using a mouse to try and demonstrate these letters to you, those diagonal lines would be sharper and harder. They would be more straight. They've actually loosened up a bit there because using a mouse. But I would really go for a very clear, distinct. And if you've got paper and pencil, should we do it? Yeah, we'll quickly whiz through it. So paper and pencil, we're going to have a go. And if you're watching later, go grab your paper and pencil, put it on pause and come back to it. So C, start on the line. Have a quick look before you commit to where the midpoint's going to be. Diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round. The A, start on the line, diagonal up, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, down and flick. The D, start on the line, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round, catch the hook and go all the way up for a nice tall stick, all the way back down to the writing line and a little flick. S, start on the writing line, diagonal up, hook over, back round and trace round like a snake. G, Start on the writing line, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round as if you're going to do an A, catch the hook, then go down below the writing line and curl round with a tail. And something I mentioned later is that you as a school will need to have a discussion about, do we hoop our tails? What do we do? I personally like a little hoop on the bottom of a G and an F and things like that and a Y, but again, that can be a school preference. I like a hoop, it's continuous and it carries on then. The O, start on the writing line, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round, catch the hook, and a little flick at the top, ready for a smile join. The QU, which often we teach together because that's the way it's always spelled in words, start on the writing line, diagonal up, hook over, all the way back round as if you're going to do an A, catch the hook, then down below the writing line, and a sharp tail in this way, and I would show it to them. Back up to the writing line, diagonal up, diagonal up to midpoint, and then down in a bowl, up the other side, down to the writing line and flick. If my diagonal line goes too high up there, really it should tuck into the midpoint and then go up. So that's poor and I apologize. Start on the writing line, diagonal up, then go straight up and hook over, up high, back round, down, straight down through the writing line, curl round like a tail and back up through the writing line. And I've got proper scripts for all of this, but actually I think it's not bad for you to see how I would just kind of naturally describe it off the cuff as well. Oh, here we are, look, here's some proper scripts that you can use. And like I say, I will do a link to some things like this that you can download from the chat if you're not a Rocket Phonics school. So that gives you the script, but make it your own, make it naturalized. Those are quite nice examples of letter formations there as well, because they've got that very straight line. Next, we've got the tall letters with the ascenders first. And these are diagonal join up and down, essentially. And yes, let's use those scripts to support us with this. So start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight up, straight down, and flick. That's for the L. For the T, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight up, straight down, flick, then cross the T from left to right above the join. H, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight up, straight down, up to form a full bridge and flick. The B, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight up, straight down, up to form a half bridge and curve to complete the B, then flick. A hooped K, and again, that's something you might need to discuss as a school. Are we a hooped K or not? I prefer it because it gives more fluency. It carries on the join. Start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight up, straight down, up to form a bow shape and flick. And I hope you're seeing that actually for learners, these are very consistent and they're not that complicated at all. They can really engage with them. Next, we've got our half height and down group. So this is going to be a diagonal join and then we're going to go back down. R, N, M, P, I, and J. R, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down, back up to form a half bridge and smile join. N, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down, back up to form a full bridge and flick. M, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down, back up to form a full bridge, then another full bridge and flick. And I might sort of loosen that to something like start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down, up and over, flick. Up to you. P, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight down through the line, back up to complete the curve of the P and flick. I, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight down to the line, flick, then dot the I. J, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight down through the line, loop around, ready to join the next letter, then dot the J. Almost there, just a couple more. Now we've got our half height and bowl shapes. These are a diagonal join, then a bowl or a zigzag like the V and the W. U, Start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down to form the bowl for the U, down and flick. Y. Start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down to form the bowl, straight down through the line, loop around to diagonal join to half height, down diagonally to form a single zigzag and a smile join at the end. W. Start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down diagonally to form a double zigzag smile join. And one to look out for is on that W, often that middle point sits lower. I naturally do it lower, and really it's better practice to bring it up to the midline. And then the odd ones. So we have a few odd ones, which are diagonal join and a different formation, and then the sweep around for the E. So for an X, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down diagonally to form the first line of X, pencil off and start back down on the writing line to form another diagonal line up to half height for the second line of X and a smile join. Z, start on the line, diagonal join to half height, straight across from left to right, diagonal back down to the line, form a little curved line. You can do straight if you prefer for the style. Little curved line I tend to do, across from left to right with a little flick, which provides a bit of flair. It's a nice little bit of style in there. And the E, start on the line and the diagonal line sweeps around to form an E. And then we've got a little sort of extra bit here with the RE, because actually this is showing us here the E when it's coming in from a smile join at the top. So remember the E you can have, it might be from the bottom or it might be from the, it's a little adjustment on the join. So start on the line, diagonal join to half height, down, back up to form a half bridge, smile join to form the line which sweeps around to form the E. So that's worth talking about and showing explicitly, because there are tons of words where that occurs. And that happens when you have an E coming after an O, an R, a V, a W, an X, all of these letters that finish up with that smile line there. So some little examples of that. So in Rocket Phonics Next Steps, if that's the program that you're using, we've put the handwriting focus on a Friday so that you've got the option. If you're not following this handwriting style, you can have it there as a bit of an extra practice, or you can just cut it out completely and use what your school uses, although I hope you're feeling a bit more confident now after coming and hearing me today. This is just a reminder of some of the things I've said. Explicit teaching of joins and formation, especially the hook over. Super simple approach, 2 joins, all start on the line unless it's a capital letter. Do an introductory lesson. Have full cursive encouraged from the start. Now we do cursive, even if I haven't taught you it yet, we're going to give it a go because you know the mechanics. Pupil engagement with what and how and why. Pupils take responsibility for thinking about size and spacing, and emphasis when you have a handwriting practice on slow and accurate. Because that's all you've got to think about, really. You've got to engage with this handwriting, go slow and accurate, no rushing. When children are applying it in other writing, we're a bit more forgiving because they're often thinking about other things like the content of their writing. So be much more forgiving there. And it's a stiff diagonal join to support through the process and the spacing, and it will soften naturally and gradually over a little bit of time. In Next Steps activity books, people sometimes ask about, well, if you're doing cursive, why do you not have cursive text in the pupil practice booklet other than that title grapheme at the top of the page? Well, the clue is there. Are the learners reading or writing? And in those activities on that activity page, if it's text that they're reading, well, it's in print because that's what we read when we read books, and it's easier to read print. And do we need children to read all of that text in print, in cursive? So we have the text. It also means if you're not using the handwriting, you've got a more flexible resource. But we have the title grapheme in cursive as a reminder of, well, actually in this lesson, we're focusing on this sound O with this spelling OA because we're having this phonics approach to basic literacy. And here's a reminder of what that grapheme would look like, which is really useful for seeing that O joining to the A so that we can talk about not having that going back down to the line and going back up the diagonal. That's going to be a smile join on the top of that. And then the spaces are blank where we want the children to write. And I would be encouraging them in this session, when we do this practice, have a go at using your cursive. You know the mechanics, and it doesn't matter what it looks like at the moment, because we're working on it and we're going to help you with that. So it's an opportunity to practice applying that cursive. But that's why we don't have cursive print, cursive text in those booklets. A few other tips to finish off then. I would, if you are leading on literacy in your school or phonics in your school, or you can encourage leaders, I would have regular training for staff in letter formation and handwriting. You cannot assume that your colleagues know what to do. Many of us were not taught it necessarily well in school ourselves. We were not necessarily taught it at teacher training college. We have not necessarily used consistent or good programs to teach it, and therefore have learned it on the job. And, you know, when we appoint teachers, it's certainly not something that we would hold against them, but it's something we'd like everyone to do, is to be able to confidently write well and teach how to write well. So I would build in some training opportunities for staff. I would raise expectations. If a teacher is teaching reception or year one, and the teacher expects the children to write in print, the teacher should be writing on the board in print, modelling print. If the teacher is teaching year two or beyond and expects the children to write in cursive, the teacher should be writing on the board and modelling at all times in the school cursive font to model it when they're writing and show that. And you'd be quite amazed actually how, if we ask teachers to do this and support them in feeling more confident, when they start to do it, and actually if they struggle, good, because then they can tell students, this is not easy, I'm struggling, oh, I didn't do that very neatly, let me do that again. Children do emulate what we do, they just pick it up indirectly. It will raise the standard of what children are doing, I guarantee it. And the teachers often feel quite proud of what they're doing as well. They like seeing their own writing look neater. That said, I totally appreciate it's a delicate matter and you have to pick your moment. Sometimes there are other things you might want a teacher to be working on, or you might need to be aware of they have a disability or a difficulty in being able to write like that. So you have to think about that when you're asking this. Absolutely high profile handwriting, and praise and reward efforts, not just results. So sometimes schools do fantastic, right, we're going to improve handwriting, let's have a handwriting competition and we're going to display this beautiful handwriting, it's going to be high profile. But some children find motor control extremely difficult. There are children who are dyspraxic or undiagnosed dyspraxic. Typically there are children with autism or Asperger's who have a co-difficulty. They find fine motor control really hard. Children with cerebral palsy, children who might not have, the muscle control in their hands, and we have to be really aware of the messaging we're giving them, because we need to reward their effort and put in the support. And so we can't be too loud about how brilliant and perfect this handwriting has to be. We need to be mindful of the children who might find that harder and support them. And be forgiving, because handwriting is really hard. You need to think about, as a school, an agreed style. So if you are working in primary, it's a good idea to have some clarification in your policy. How big are your tails going to be? On the G, the Y, the Q, what are they going to look like? Are they going to be nice and tight and small? Are they going to be big and flamboyant? Are you bothered? Do you mind? Which style F? There are a few different style Fs. You might look at the F that I use and go, oh, don't like that style, prefer something else. Are you going to have a hooped or a non-hooped K? These little details are really useful to iron out, and it's for the consistency. So if children move from class to class, and also within a piece of work, you'd like them to have a consistent K or a consistent F, because it adds to the style. Other tips, scaffolds are fine. If you want to do things like use a yellow highlighter and children write on top, or a grey pen they write, absolutely fine. If children find it hard to judge the space, so you use a highlighter to go along and create a coloured line to show them the side, absolutely fine. Trying different pencil grippers, great. Trying different pens or pencils thicknesses or shapes, great. But be open-minded. If a young learner is struggling with their pencil hold, it doesn't mean that a bigger, thicker pencil will be the answer. Sometimes Young learner, small hand, small pencil actually is easier than trying to hold something chunky. So be open-minded and try different things. By all means, do activities to build muscle control, things like playing with plasticine to help the hand. Yes, absolutely. Handwriting is the first spinning plate to fall. So in a school, it's always the one that drops, but it's really quick and easy to get back on track, actually. A sharpened pencil makes all the difference. Sometimes I see beautiful formation, but the pencil is so blunt, it just doesn't look good. The children know it doesn't look good. It's hard to distinguish because it's so blunt. But that's something that adults should be preparing before class and have a surplus if possible. So if a child comes to you midway through some writing, handwriting or other writing, and says, "Oh, my pencil's broken, or my pencil's blunt," I've got another one. I've got another one. Here you go. It's ready to go. It's sharpened. You don't need to go and sharpen your pencil all lesson. And I can kind of tell a lot when I walk into a class and I see, first thing I see is a pot of sharpened pencils. It gives a lot about the ethos of the class. And think about planning in a school survey or an audit. Now, this is not doing a learning walk and checking up on people. This is, do you know what, guys? Let's pause. Let's take a minute. Let's see what's going on. Let's look at the detail and observe closely. What are the things that we could pick up on with our learners and our teachers? The posture, the pencils, the formation, the modelling, what's going on? And then think about how can staff be better supported to teach and implement a handwriting policy? Do we need to do a staff meeting where everybody starts practicing, put on the recording of Abby whizzing through and we all have a practice at that? Do we need to do some peer coaching of that? How can we support one another to improve handwriting? Oh, and that was it. And do you know what? That was really good for time, wasn't it? I was thinking, I'm not sure how long the session's going to be. It could be half an hour, could be an hour and a half, who knows? So we did it in an hour. So fantastic. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time. And I really gets me very excited that you've come to find out about handwriting because obviously I'm quite passionate about it. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat now, or you can pop them in chat later because these recordings exist and I come back and I check every now and then for any follow-up questions. So by all means, pop something in the chat. If you want to get in touch directly, you can email me. My email is hello@abigailsteeltraining.com. So you can pop me an email. And the final thing to mention is that I know I said that I will pop in the chat some links where you can download some scripts to support you and also some activities. I've got some things that you can have for that. But I will also put a copy of the PowerPoint slide deck. So you are welcome to have these slides, cut, paste them, reuse them, share them around, not a problem at all. I will do that next, so come back and check in a little while. That's it. Have a great day and let me know how you get on. And yeah, one of the things I might do is now that I've got handwriting on the brain, go and get some handwriting samples and share with you some points. So I'll have a think about that. All right. Anyway, guys, I got to go. I'm waffling. Thank you so much. Speak to you all later. Bye.